Now I want to take a look to start with one of the more fun ones, perhaps a little bit the naughtier ones. It is Elegy 19, sometimes titled Going to Bed, sometimes titled To His Mistress, or To His Mistress Going to Bed. There's a variety. All of these titles and the orders in which they are laid out can be a little speculative. We don't really have, because he did not publish this stuff in his own lifetime, because they come collected from a great variety of work, the editors are playing with this an awful lot. But Going to Bed, and this is one that you don't read with children around. Come, madam, come, all rest my powers defy, until I labor, I in labor lie. The foe ofttimes having the foe in sight is tired with standing, though he never fight. Off with that girdle, like heaven's zone, glistening but a far fairer world encompassing. Unpin that spangled breastplate which you wear, that the eyes of busy fools may be stopped there. Unlace yourself, for that harmonious chime tells me from you that now it is bedtime. Off with that happy busk which I envy, that still can be and still can stand so nigh. Your gown going off, such beauteous state reveals, as when from flowery meads the hill's shadow steals. Off with that wiry coronet, and show the hairy diadem on which you doth grow. Now off with those those shoes, and then safely tread in this love's hallowed temple, this soft bed. In such white robes heaven's angels used to be, received by men, thou, angel, bringest with thee a heaven like Mahomet's paradise. And though ill spirits walk in white, we easily know by these angels from an evil sprite. Those set our hairs, but these are flesh upright. License my roving hands, and let them go before, behind, between, above, below. Oh, my America, my newfound land, my kingdom, safeliest when one man mans. My mine of precious stones, my empery, how blessed am I in this discovering thee. To enter in these bonds is to be set free, is to be free. There where my hand is set, my seal shall be. Full nakedness, all joy are due to thee. All souls unbodied, bodies unclothed must be. To taste whole joys, gems which you women use are like Atalanta's balls cast in men's views. That when a fool's eye lighteth on a gem, his earthly soul may covet theirs, not them. Like pictures or like books, gay coverings made for laymen, are all women thus arrayed. Themselves are mystic books, which only we, whom their imputed grace will dignify, must see revealed. Then, since that I may know, as liberally as to a midwife show, thyself cast all, yea, this white linen hence, there is no penance due to innocence. I teach thee, I am naked first. Why then, what needst thou have more covering than a man? Now, that's a lot of words. And you can be forgiven if you're just reading over and like, doth. It's a little old-timey. Okay. This is like grandpa poetry, it's just old, right? Well, grandpa was getting some. If you actually lean in and pay attention to what few words you recognize are saying, it's pretty, I don't know, smutty, dirty, kinky, lascivious. There's an obvious story being laid out here of a man pleading with a woman that she undress for obvious purposes. But the way they go about it, I think, is kind of curious. First of all, there is a fairly regular rhyme scheme, a fairly regular meter that has a couple little odd glitches here and there that might seem like, well, he just didn't quite stick the landing on that one line. But he has those frequently enough that it's not him just screwing up. The lines have that disjointed, gear-shifting quality to them that keep you from falling into the regular dog trot rhythm of iambic pentameter or whatever the meter is, which does tend to lull you into stupefaction, SAT word. But by being just a little bit quirky, he can keep you a little bit more off balance. Just look at that second line. Until I labor, I in labor lie. Now, you don't have to really parse that out too specifically. Until I labor, I in labor lie. All right, he's playing on in the work he is going to do to get her undressed, the work he's going to do after she gets undressed, the possibility of her being in labor because they got undressed. But that balancing, that split in that line around the comma, until I labor, I in labor lie, it throws the rhythm off just a little in the second line. And it's got that matching word that doesn't mean exactly the same the first time as it does the second time you hear it. So it's like something a little different there. He's irritating you. He's trying to rough up the smoothness of Renaissance verse. Off with that girdle like heaven's zone glistening. Now, he would certainly not be the first to equate pleasures of the flesh with spirituality. That's kind of an old thing. But it is notable, again, that he hits that note, I think, pretty quick. And it pops up throughout, always an undercurrent. Bring with thee a heaven like Muhammad's paradise, which is a reference to the virgins that the faithful find upon achieving heaven. But it is also notably, I would say, another reference to spirituality. Now, he was no Muslim, and certainly he is dangling what would become known as a kind of Orientalist idea here, the exoticism of it. But it is another spiritual reference that do crop up throughout. But he also reaches for some other odd metaphors in there, some other oddball references. Now, okay, sex and spirituality have a history together, and he's playing on that. But sex and the age of exploration, the discovery of the new world, that's a little fresh. If he is writing in the early 17th century, that's all over the headlines, but it's not really poking in too much into the poetry. It hasn't filtered down to that level just yet. He's not the first, but it's still relatively new. License my roving hands, let them go before, behind, between, above, below. Again, notice how the meter becomes a little choppy there, a little off kilter. You're out of the groove. Oh, my America, my newfound land, my kingdom, safeliest when one man manned, monarchy. There's a weird little argument for imperialism here, which you have to figure, okay, as a young poet hoping for employment in the royal government, you're going to write stuff that says, rah, rah, imperialism. Yay, the king should do everything and everybody listen to him. So he's slipping that in there, but in a way that is automatically complicated by the fact that it is also a poem about sex. Should we take this seriously? This paean to the imperial destiny of European powers overrunning the Americas? Very little in this poem seems to be serious, so I have to say no. So does that mean that reaching for the imperialist dream of European powers and hitching that to a sexual conquest, does that seem like it's a serious argument or something that only an idiot would say? Donne is leaving you to figure that out. Full nakedness, all joys are due to thee. As souls unbodied, bodies unclothed must be. Notice that second line, as souls unbodied, bodies unclothed must be. Playing on the different phrases, playing on the different echoes of the word within a single line, bifurcated down the middle with that comma so that there is that weird one thing and the other. Not quite fitting. But of course also that word souls, which is a spiritual term within a poem about nookie nookie. What's going on there? Full nakedness is another way of saying, well, natural right, perhaps. The law of nature. That's generally not seen, and philosophers in Europe will be picking this up over the next century from Donne, not seen as an idea that is friendly to divine rights, or rather, the divine right of kings. Natural rights are not conducive to imperial motivations. So one idea is floated in one stanza, the opposite seems to be getting whispered in the next. Again, always that contrast, that herky-jerky gear shift. To teach thee I am naked first, why then, what needst thou have more covering than a man? That's a peculiar little line. But what I think is interesting in that is there is obviously, some sexual humor being played here, but also, quite frankly, some, well, in the modern day, we would call this coercion or assault. This is inappropriate behavior, let's say. No means no, right? He is pushing past that and going on almost 50 lines of ignoring the word no. But to teach thee I am naked first, what needst thou have more covering than a man? Well, that is him saying, you don't want to get naked? Great, I'm already naked. And if you really don't want to get naked, how about this? I'll be your covering. Let me just lay down on top of you. Kind of an awkward line. Line for a pickup or a seduction, not necessarily for a poet. But that notion of coercion, that notion of conquest feeds back into the idea of the imperialism again. So he's raising that back up. And underneath all of this is, of course, the basic morality of the situation. This is what is known as a dramatic monologue, where somebody, the poetic speaker, is speaking, is saying something, usually to another figure, and we're just getting to listen in on this. He is playing out this little scene with an imagined other character, a girl, presumably, and we're just watching it. So it does feel a little bit like a seduction or a sexual assault, but we're watching him do it. It's objectified. And at times it seems funny. At times it feels a little cringy. At times it's kind of harrowing. But we're supposed to be drawn into that and not know exactly how to take it. We're not supposed to understand what it means. Because our consciousness as readers and the poem's consciousness as a literary artifact are just another form of the metaphysical conceit. Two things that aren't necessarily connecting, but they're falling in enough proximity to one another that they can, like two magnets at the same pole, come into a relationship with one another, if not actually connect. The other thing that I will touch on before we move on to the next one, this is an elegy. An elegy is a lament, another confusing literary word, but it's generally something that is written for something being mourned. And I read through this, nobody seems to be dead. It doesn't seem to be mourning anything. So what's being mourned? We're not told. Maybe we are supposed to mourn for this young girl's virtue, whatever that is. Maybe we're supposed to mourn for this young man's lack of virtue, because maybe the poem is anticipating that the people reading it, who again may be the same young bucks that Donne himself hung out with, maybe the people reading it should have a moral center that would say, that's not okay. And maybe the elegiac part, the lament, is that people like this can get away with that. Because while it is so physical, so much about physical conquest, sexual joy, our life as animalistic humans, so much of it is riven through with questions of spirituality, questions of morals. And even, especially in that last closing line, the question of the absence of those morals and the absence of spirituality. I think that might be what is lamented here.